Hi, everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of LTC Heroes Live by Experience Care. Today, I am super excited because I have Maria D. Moen as my guest. She's the Senior Vice President, Innovation and External Affairs at ADVault. Welcome, Maria, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been so looking forward to doing this. This is really an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, let's start with your LTC initiation story. We love to ask our guests how they started working in long-term care, and tell us about you. How did you start working in long-term care?
Well, I was going to college and I got a job working in the internal audit department at what was then Manor Care Quality Inns back in their golden days. Got to working within the internal audit department and really learned a lot when you audit long-term care communities. You really get in and take a look at every nook and cranny. And I developed a love for not only the physical plant and the people, but who we were serving. I moved to the reimbursement department. I just have this head for numbers, and I never left long-term care. In over 30 years, I have been exclusively focused on long-term post-acute care, although, of course, I dealt with the other sectors that touch our sector so closely: acute care, physician, ambulatory, behavioral. But yeah, it was just one of those things that I fell into and realized that it was no accident. This is where I was meant to be.
So I'm interested. You just mentioned you also worked in other sectors of healthcare. And so, what are the things that you learned specifically in the long-term care industry that you wouldn't have learned in any other industry or healthcare in general?
I think when you look at other sectors of healthcare, if you're talking about the acute world, which is the hospital world, that is a world that I suppose sees people sometimes at their very worst, right? So you're there for an acute illness, things are happening very quickly, and the goal is really to treat you and get you stabilized and move you to the next setting. When you're working in physician and ambulatory offices, you will see people for very short snippets of time. It's an appointment, or it's a consultation, or it's a very finite service that you're providing. In long-term care, even on short-term stays, because a short-term stay, can be 21 days while you recover from some type of orthopedic surgery and you need some additional therapy to get you back on your feet. All of a sudden, you are in the life of the individual. It is not a moment in time. It is days and weeks and months in time. And to see these individuals who come in for care, and whether they're there for a very long time or whether they're there for a short time, you become immersed in their life, and their life becomes that community that you work in. And all of a sudden, your lens shifts. It's not a moment, it is the true essence of the person, and your ability to impact and your ability to improve. It just becomes so extended if you really look at the moment and you really embrace the opportunity to weave your story into all of these other people's stories. It is a singular opportunity, and one I wouldn't trade for the world.
Wow, that's so well, beautifully said. I love that.
Thank you.
Let's talk into a little bit about ADVault. Let tell me a little bit what you guys are doing. What are you focusing on? What problems are you trying to solve? And specifically, how is it going to affect long-term care?
Sure. So I started in long-term care a good few years ago, back in the days when we were all paper-based systems. And so I became very well aware of what paper can do and what paper needs to do and how paper charts work. And I watched the migration to technology. And I knew that what long-term care doing was the very best they could do with the tools that they had. I'd worked on the vendor side, I'd worked on the provider side. But one of the things that I observed over and over again was that when there were moments when there was a significant change in health status, sort of the go-to was, you are now at a level that is higher than the care that we can provide here. So we are going to send you to the hospital. We're going to call the ambulance. We're going to call 911. And I understand that need to render the care that is appropriate. But I also observed people who had documented their goals and their preferences and their priorities for care. They could have been spiritual or cultural or religious preferences and priorities for how things should happen. They could have been due to a disease state that was not a current reason that they were in the skilled nursing facility. Still, in all, it impacted their health and their care. And if you weren't aware of that, how could you possibly help them? And I watched people get moved out of the facility in an emergent manner, taken to the hospital. There was a lot of people that were suffering from cognitive issues, dementia, Alzheimer's, and they would get moved to the hospital for care. And again, I understood the need to render the appropriate level of care, but that was a medical need. That was a facility process and protocol. And when you got these people back, oftentimes they were shaken. They were incredibly impacted by those experiences because they had to treat them and they had to triage them and they had to get them back where they belonged, and it was a very impersonal experience. And I thought, when I first became aware of ADVault, I said, here's the opportunity. Not only is this an organization that believes in the memorialization, the digital memorialization of who I am, what's important to me, what do I want, how do I want my care journey to go, but these folks were focused on interoperability. And from the earliest days, I understood the need to move information from system to system, and it was compelling to me. I met with the founders, and they had personal stories. They had created this digital organization because in their own lives there were personal stories, and some of them weren't very happy stories of loved ones who had received care and it wasn't concordant with what the individual wanted, and they wanted a solution, so they went and looked. They couldn't find one, so they built one. And I said, those are the people that are going to bend the curve in healthcare. Those are the people who are good-hearted, who are ethical, who are putting everything they have towards solutions that benefit millions of people. And of course, they were really good people. They were engaging, and they appreciated my diversity of expertise and my focus on financial, clinical, interops, systems, implementation. And it was just really just a dream come true. I was so honored when they asked me to join the team. And aside from the consultants and the contractors who were doing development, I was really the first employee hired. So I was very proud of that. And I'm coming close to 5 years with this organization. So I'm here for the long haul. I want to be the change that I want to see in the world.
That's beautiful. And in terms of, as the senior vice president of innovation and external affairs, what are you focusing on? What is your role? What are you involved in?
So my job, I always say that I have the best job in the company because everybody has a job description and they hold to those processes and protocols. And when you're over innovation, you are allowed to step out of the box and you can look to the future. You can look at what's emerging and you can think about how you could repurpose that for the specific use case that you're dealing with. One of the other things that I like to do is I like to look back on how things were done historically. And you can repurpose how things were done historically. And by simply looking at them differently, you can make them new again. And so a lot of the standardized rules of this is your job and this is how you do it, these protocols don't apply to me. I am allowed to dream. I am allowed to come up with ideas and engage with non-traditional partners and processes and interoperability mechanisms. And I can go out and look at that and see if it fits the overall vision of what we're trying to accomplish. And if I can find an opportunity, I can walk down that road and dream with the dreamers, and I can look at inequities within the system. I can look at emerging new technologies like FHIR. I mean, who would have thought that the same thing that allows you to pick up your phone and access Facebook and LinkedIn and all of these other things. Who would think that you would repurpose that for healthcare? Other innovators like me. And external affairs allows me to get out there and spread the word. We have done a really poor job in long-term post-acute care of telling our story. And I have said for many, many years, we need to tell our story better. We are homes. We are havens. We are refuges for folks that sometimes society does not have an active place for, or families that have gotten busy and they're growing, and as an older person's needs have increased, they're stretched so thin that they need additional help. And when you look at these communities and all of the people that work in them, there is such care, there is such attention to detail, there is such a realization that every day these folks that work there, from the housekeepers to the transportation people to the dietary aides, some of the most unseen workers, they are intimate with these residents who depend on that kindness, that conversation. Oh, you look like my granddaughter. And, let me tell you a story about something that happened to me. And they always have time in the heat of the raging inferno that was COVID. We had hundreds of thousands of people that left their families, moved into these communities, and cared for these people 24/7, sleeping only when they could, because they knew if they went home, they might risk their families getting an infection. They might pick up an infection and bring it back to the people they were responsible for. There are so many unsung heroes. And if we did a better job of telling our story, of telling the nation that we are caring for some of the most vulnerable, valuable, just World Book of Encyclopedia laden individuals who have life history, I think that public perception would turn around. And so external affairs is great for me. I can tell our story. I can talk about how we're moving forward. I can look at a problem and focus on a solution and not worry about the bad press and the PR. And I'm out there churning, and I'm out there trying to find new ways to tell a good story, to tell a better story, and to deliver that personalized, just really high quality electronic digital care that we really do deliver in so many communities.
Yeah, I'm actually so glad you just mentioned that, because that's why we started this show, LTC Heroes, is because we wanted to share those stories. We wanted people to work in this industry to feel like they were doing something that not they know they're doing something valuable, but we wanted to show the rest of the world that what they were doing was valuable, right? So I'm so
True.
glad you mentioned that. I've actually had recently on the show many advocates for technology in long-term care, as I call them, and everybody that I ask this question has a different answer. So I'm super excited to see what you're gonna say. Um, why is it so important, the technology and the innovation specifically in long-term care, in your opinion?
So, in my opinion, again, we have what can be a very vulnerable population. And long-term care is a very myriad sector. We have some of the sickest of the sick, and we have all the way through the spectrum of care to just older folks, right? 55 plus communities where I've got a clinician on staff and everybody's, running around in their golf carts, and there's theaters and there's stores in the community, and they're just in an environment that lends itself to healthy longevity. So there's really quite a spectrum of individuals. But when you look at the people that we care for, and I'll focus on less of the independent and more of the folks who need clinical lifestyle assistance. We get people from a hospital. How can we possibly treat them and care for them within the first 2 hours, within the first 12 hours of their stay, if we don't have the information that we need to know what are their conditions, What is their cognitive and physical status? What are the medications that they are on? When is the last time they got that medication? How many of those medications are specialized? And they might not be readily available through the pharmacy. They might take a minute to pre-order and get in. How do I know if there's early onset of dementia? How can I do the best job I can possibly do if I'm not getting the information I need? It's like walking around in a room of broken glass with a bag over your head. And so that need for technology is extremely essential. Also, we have people who might be battling chronic conditions. And so I might send them out for dialysis. Well, I want that dialysis facility to understand something about this individual too. Is English their second language? Are there religious and spiritual and cultural aspects of who they are as a person that it's really important to respect? You know, what is their family structure like, etc. So the need to get and to give information. Let's take that long-term care resident who has an unfortunate significant change in condition, and really doesn't happen during the day. It always happens about 2 o'clock in the morning. If I'm going to send that individual to the hospital, now I am aware of this person. I know them by first name. I know their family members. I know what they like to eat. I know what they don't like. I know so much about them. I'm sending a pseudo loved one to a community for care. I want to send everything I can tell that organization about this individual, because once they've been triaged and treated to an extent that they can come back to me, I need to know that they're going to come back to me not confused by what they just went through, not cognitively impacted by all of the rush and the sounds and the noise and the people that they didn't know. I need to be able to push and pull information. We tend to be there for the long haul. And so when we send somebody to a hospital, there's someone that we know that we care about. And when I get someone from a hospital, I need to know immediately how to do the very best job I can for them. Paper doesn't do that. Nurses don't have time to sit and read through an 80-page, print up. They don't have time to do all of this. They need that data to hit their computer systems and populate it with enough information that they can go, yep, got it. Mrs. Smith, let's have a conversation. I understand you do like this, you don't like this, you're struggling with this. You don't speak to your daughter, you do speak to your son. Let's get you going. Here's your medications. You've got some physical conditions. I'm aware of them. Just telling them that you know something about them, that reduces fear, that increases dignity. And that's what we need to do. That's what I would want. So that's what I'm trying to do for those that I can possibly impact through my work. Is that helpful?
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of specific technological solutions that are meant to do exactly what you just said, what is there available out there for long-term care organizations to use?
Well, there are a lot of solutions out there, and that's where I commend the industry. I'm a big believer in free enterprise and the capital system that we live in. Where there is a demand, there will arise a solution. Now, there are different varieties of solutions, and I spent about 14 years helping long-term care facilities who needed automation run through the various vendors that were out there and find the right solutions that fit their organization. And for all of the solutions that are out there, some of them focus on doctor's orders being the catalyst. Some of them focus on, the finance being the catalyst. If I can get everything billed, then I'll just, capture it in the clinical end and it'll keep my facility in business. Some of them are very care plan centric. Some of them are very problem oriented. So for each organization, each long-term care organization, they have their own special sauce. They have their own care protocols and ways of caring for people that differentiate them, as do the vendors. And so there are great solutions out there. There are, dozens of different vendors. Some of them lead the industry because more people have embraced them than others. There are new and emerging solutions. They've watched and they've seen what does work and what doesn't work. And there's emerging solutions that are out there that are beginning to solve some of the problems that people have just struggled with. So there's EHRs, there are what I'll call niche products, products that are specifically built to do something very important. So you might select an EHR solution and it works really well for your community, but you really don't like their medication management so much. It just doesn't meet your needs. Maybe you're a dementia care facility and just your rules and your needs are different. It is perfectly viable to look at a niche solution that is a medication administration system, and it was specifically built only to do what it does very well. And if you can work with that core solution provider and your EHR vendor and find the right integration points, there's no problem with going out and grabbing best of breed products. Analytics will tell you a lot about your organization. You know, as a nurse manager, you know what you've put into place. You've got a lot of reporting, you've got a lot of staff, you've got a lot of HR, you can kind of walk the floor here and there, but you have to rely on, you know, your analytics, the information that you're getting. Not all EHRs have great analytics solutions. No problem, go get one. You know, not all fabulous clinical systems have the best financial AR claim system you've ever seen. Well, you know, we've got to keep, you know, the lights on, so we have to find an AR claim solution. So that's fine. Go find what you want. There is much more automation out there than long-term care gets credit for. There are still people that are doing some things on paper. And whether that is where they are in their organizational maturity and they have decided to focus on other aspects that are digital and they've left this piece behind on paper because it was less important to the care of the residents than it was to them to adopt another piece of technology, that's fine. There is much more technology out there. And I think that the long-term care vendors are hearing the call and they're feeling the demand and they know that they have to have performant efficient products. They have to be able to reach out into the greater healthcare ecosystem and enable interoperability, because one provider is one provider and there's just not a single person who isn't touched by multiple providers. So I think the call to expand technology utilization, do it smart, do it easy, do it efficient, don't create more burden, for goodness sakes. I think that call is being heard, and I think that our technology partners are rising to answer that call.
Yeah, for sure. And let's dive a little bit more into that implementation process. I'm interested in what are, so if a facility decides, okay, we're gonna stop using paper and we're going to implement an EHR, what are the next steps? How do they do the research? Where do they ask other clinicians out there for recommendations? How do they start? And any tips, actionable advice that you can give smaller facilities for the implementation process is very welcome.
You bet, you bet. Well, you know, I will always tell you that if you're not happy with your EHR, or if you're maybe one of the county-owned homes that, you know, really has problems with funding and resources, and it's really time to move on to a technology solution, first thing you need to know is who you are. Who are you? How do you do things? What do you do? Who does them? Make sure that you have a clear blueprint of who you are, even the bad parts, even the ugly parts, even the parts you want to change. Know yourself. Then you always can dialogue with another like long-term care facility out there. When you get to the point where you're maybe down to a couple, 3 different vendors, yep, I've weeded out these guys, they're too expensive, or you know, they've got a fat client solution here in the building and I don't want that, I don't have any IT staff, and I've heard bad things about this guy, so you know, these are my couple 3. Get some names from the vendor and start calling them, and don't call the top 3, because chances are good they get called by everybody. And I've worked for some large providers, and sometimes the vendors will incentivize those providers to give, you know, good quality references. get out to some of these association shows. If you're a nurse, get to some of the nursing association shows, and a lot of them are virtual. Make some contacts, hit somebody up on the chat and say, hey, I noticed you work in the same state I do, or looking at EHR solutions. Would you ever just be willing to talk to me off the cuff? Kind of go off book and talk to other people who have used those systems. I'm sure the vendors are going to tell you that they can do everything, and I'm sure their top 3 to 5 references are going to tell you that they hung the moon and the stars. But you need to talk to people who have used the systems and really understand this is where it's soft, this is where it's outstanding. Now, where it's soft, does that match who you are? Is that a problem that you were looking to solve? Oh, I can't be soft in that area. Let me talk to some people from the other vendor. I think it's really important to know who you are. And I think it was a Pogo, comic strip from 100 years ago that said, if you don't know where you're going, chances are good you're probably going to get there. So know what you're looking for and know what your key objectives are, and then go beyond the references that the vendor tells you and integrate with some people out there in the community and get some real live feedback. And don't be afraid of areas of the software that aren't great. I mean, nobody makes everything perfect. I can tell you an Excel bug that's been here for the last 20 years, but find out based on what your differentiators are. How does the software work for this? Now, okay, so I do 12-hour shifts. I don't do 3/8s. I do 2/12s because of my, area that I live in. How does it handle that kind of staffing? We do a lot of short-term rehab, you might say, depending on, your facility. How does it handle the integration of therapy services and the care planning of therapy services? How does it integrate with its billing system? Does it touch any of the other outside transfer partners that you get people from or you send people to? How does it touch them? Does it just kind of give you a place to log into, or do you really get information in? And when you get information in, is it all in this great big huge document management trash bin, or is it archived and organized to the point where you can find it? There's lots of different questions that you can ask. And then I always tell people when you're implementing, you need to engage the people you don't think you need to engage. You need to talk to the front desk. You need to talk to housekeeping. You need to talk to, dietary aides. You need to talk to medication assistants, certified nursing assistants. Nurses are really smart people. They were well trained. They understand deductive reasoning. They know how to use a tool when you give them a tool. But you need to talk to the people in your building that are that vital support staff, because they're going to give you information as you seek to know yourself that you might not have otherwise known. And so I think engaging everybody into a technology changeover or implementation initiative is super important for buy-in. You don't want to shoehorn anything in, and you want everybody to feel as though they had a piece of it, because success is shared. And when I had a voice in what happened, and I told you something, and by golly, you found a system, and it's this one little piece, but it was about me, I'm going to do everything I can to make it work. So it's the people that break technology. So it's the people who will also help make it successful. Just spread that net far and wide and make sure everybody's heard, because they'll all be invested in helping you be successful.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's so insightful information. I feel like I learned a lot, so I can tell our audience for sure well. Thank you for that. So before we move into the ADI Access project that you've been leading with FHIR, I just want quickly to do a small introduction on Advanced Directed Information Access, which you kind of touched base at the beginning. Yeah. Because I had no idea about this before meeting you. So maybe other people out there are the same as me. So please give us a quick, short introduction on this, and why is it important, and why you're such a huge advocate for it.
You bet. So in all of the years that I worked on all kinds of technology, and I've probably worked on 14, 15 of the nation's top long-term care platforms, both the clinicals, the financials, the analytics, all of it. This is an area that remained very paper-based. And so a lot of times you'd see a checkbox. Is there an advanced directive? Yes or no? That gives me nothing. Nothing. If there's not an advance directive, I'm quite sure that the person has goals, preferences, and priorities for care that maybe they just haven't taken the time to do the document. Maybe they had a document and it's on paper, and so it's locked in that filing cabinet and there with you. There are way too many people who get marked, oh, so if there's an advance directive, that means go ahead and render all resuscitative measures. No, that's not a leap that we can make. The days of having a yes no checkbox or a code, a no code or a full code checkbox, those days are done. They have to be over because not everybody fits into that box. Sure, you are going to find these individuals who have a goal a year from now. I am going to be at my granddaughter's wedding. So I don't care what my health status is. Don't even look at the number on my date of birth. I am telling you that if something happens to me, it's a full court press, people. I want you to throw everything but the kitchen sink at me. I want you to do everything you can do because I have to be at this wedding in a year. You will also have people that have fought a long, hard battle. And as their body is aged and their disease state has really chipped away at their resolve and their quality of life, you will find people who say, you know what, spiritually, culturally, religiously, personally, I've lived a good life and I've done the things that I need to do. And what I don't want to do is have a bunch of things done to me now. So if something happens to me, I don't want you to do nothing. I want you to keep me comfortable. I want you to keep me pain free. Go get a palliative care specialist to help me and my family ease into this next last stage of my life. And maybe they want something in the middle, right? The three bears, right? Great big, medium sized, and just a little bit. And the people that fall into the middle are more common than you think. So I don't want to be on a vent because COVID taught me a lot of things about being on a vent, but I do want you to try to help me. What about one of those bag things? Could you help me breathe with one of those bag things? Because that's not going to leave me unable to communicate or maybe damage my vocal cords, right? So people have very specific ideas. We work with an organization that manages chronic kidney disease and end-stage renal disease. And a lot of those people have spent a lifetime on dialysis battling kidney problems. And they will tell you in their advanced healthcare decision document, sure, go ahead and bring me back if you can bring me back. But if the alternative is dialysis, don't do that. I'm done with that. Or maybe I do want that. It's been working. Keep it up. You'll have all kinds of cultural barriers, all kinds of religious barriers. And so it's super important that we knock that off, that we just stop this business. And paper is never where you want it to be. You might have 5 different forms filled out, and they're witnessed and they're notarized and they're on picture frames all hanging next to my refrigerator so that if I'm home and I have an event and EMS comes in, they can look and see what they're supposed to do. But I need to hop in the car real quick and I need to run up and I need to get some milk and some cookies. And while I'm in the car, something happens. All of your paper was not there when it needed to be. And what you wanted, what you took the time to document and tell your family about and your designated healthcare agent, none of them are there with you. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to render the highest possible level of medical assistance that they can render because that's their job. And so you can't be mad at them about it. So I have seen this in long-term post-acute care. I've seen people get shipped out and there was an advance directive and it just said yes or no, and it was stored in some digital filing cabinet and the nurse couldn't find it, and she was like, okay, I gotta go, this person is in trouble, I can't look through this computer system to find this, so okay, I'm going to call 911 and I'm going to do what I swore to do when I became a nurse, which is to take care of people. So the time has come to break the bonds of paper. And the time has come for us to really respect and honor how people want to be treated. And advanced directives are not just about CPR and life-sustaining treatment. They're about what's important to me. What are my goals of care? What are the things that I don't like? I don't like needles. So many of the female residents that I worked with had a bias against male caregivers when it came to certain activities of daily life. They didn't want to be toileted and they didn't want to be bathed by male caregivers. That's okay. That's just a remnant of who they are and the life that they've lived. Well, I deserve an opportunity to memorialize this, and I deserve to have it visible in my EHR, not in a checkbox, because I'm more complicated than a checkbox. You're more complicated than a checkbox. And it is incumbent on these EHR vendors to make that information accessible, to make it accessible to the hospital. I want that information at the hospital before they've even shut the back doors on the ambulance that is taking me there. I don't want to be over there for 3 hours and I've already gotten CPR. And then somebody realized that there's a sheaf of paperwork and said, oh my, they're a DNR. We can do better. We have to do better.
Yeah, even more now after COVID, where seniors were, isolated and they couldn't see their family members, and you had nobody to kind of stand up for them. I think did that have any effect actually? Like, is that?
It really was. Prior to COVID, the topic of advanced healthcare decision documents was, kind of uncomfortable. It's one of those things you avoid, right? So I'm getting older. Well, I guess I better get a will so that the kids don't fight over my stuff, and let me memorialize what I want for my advanced care. And, it's one of those older people housekeeping things. And people were comfortable with paper, and doctors, they grab the paper, they scan it, they trap it in their EHR, it doesn't go anywhere else. And so everybody seemed to be pretty happy. And then COVID hit. And I countless stories. Physicians with sweat down their back who had been in the building for 36 hours straight, treating and triaging people, going, I didn't have anything to tell me different. So I followed the best medical protocol I could. And this is a 92-year-old woman. And I wished that I knew if that's what she wanted. And I wish that I knew that she wanted less or she wanted more. And people 30 years old, younger than you, younger than me, who were riding bikes and running marathons and contracted COVID. Well, it was an older person topic, so I don't have anything. So in they went to receive the highest standard of medical care. And were their last days on a vent or being prone positioned or any of the treatments, were those the last days that they envisioned? We don't know. It wasn't memorialized. So COVID brought us back to, we are the first generation ever to be allowed to say how we will die. Nobody in history has ever been allowed to say that. And it is our right to say how we will live and how we will die. And we have to exercise that right. If COVID taught us nothing else, it taught us that you have to prepare for something that could happen, no matter how old you are, because otherwise your family suffers because they wish they would have known. And the caregivers who cry for you, they know that's not what you wanted, but they're going to do what they're supposed to do unless there's something that tells them different. And your family, your family knows that's not how you would have wanted to spend your last few days. But you have to memorialize it, or else medicine will do exactly what it's supposed to do, which is stabilize you and keep you going.
Yeah, for sure. Let's dive into your project with FHIR. What is this trying to? We talked a little bit about what ADI access, why is it important, and what are we trying to solve with it. But so tell us about this project. Who is involved? What are you trying to accomplish? How is it going to affect long-term care? Tell us everything.
All right. So the ADI with FHIR project was born during COVID. And in HL7, which is a worldwide standards organization, and a lot of the healthcare standards that allow, medication or the doctor to write you a prescription on the computer, and then when you go to the pharmacy, your prescription is waiting for you. All of those standards that information moves from system A to system B, that was born within HL7. And so HL7 had long had the desire to digitize and make available from system A to system B anything involving advanced healthcare decisions documents. But, it's kind of like pushing a rock up a hill before COVID. COVID really created an appetite. It created a demand on the part of the healthcare providers because they knew that they could do better if they only had the information from the person. It created a demand on the part of people. How many of our long-term care residents said, if something happens, I want you to treat me in place. You're not sending me to the hospital. I don't know them. There's sick people there, and I'm going to stay right here with the people I know. I mean, there was such an appetite to really get this project underway, and we had use cases by the millions. And so the PASIO community, post-acute care interoperability, the PASIO community picked up this project, and I interviewed and I was asked to lead the project. So the project kicked off during COVID. The first thing that we started with was person-authored information. So the first thing that we sought to do, we did an environmental scan. We pulled hundreds of jurisdictional, and I won't even say it's by state because there can be a few within each state, pulled hundreds of advanced directive jurisdictional forms. We pulled personal advanced care plans, and some of those are on paper, some of those were digitized. We pulled every single piece of information we could pull. We deconstructed it all so that there was a concept and a concept and a concept. And then we looked to standardized vocabulary terms. So how does that play in, right? Well, if someone says something in machine A and they have their own way of saying it, if there's a standardized vocabulary code 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and everybody knows what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is, you can say it however you say it. And when that data goes from system A to system B will say, oh, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I know what that is. And then it has the same meaning from system A to system B. So we wed those concepts to standardized vocabulary terms so that when it left system A and went to system B, it could have the same meaning. We incorporated all the unique wording because many states have very precise ways of stating a concept. The concept is what it is. I mean, everybody's trying to figure out the same thing. So we made sure that that unique wording went from system A to system B. And we incorporated all of these legacy ways of enforcing forms, witnesses, notaries. I mean, today you can literally buy a house with a digital signature, and I believe that the Uniform Law Commission is catching up with the times, and they are updating the recommended national standard advanced directive for the first time in 30 years to accommodate digital ways of doing things. But we looked at a way to move all of this information that could be patient authored from one system to another. And maybe an implementer would actually take their paper form and go, I'm the state of X. And, there's a way to do this now. Well, I'm going to put a web portal up and I'm going to let people type their answers into, this paper. And then I'm going to take all of that information and I'm going to make sure that it's accessible. And so whether it was moving a scanned piece of paper or whether it was moving discrete data, we accommodated the ability to do that through this project. It's called ADI with FHIR. Now we had to find a name, and no name's going to make everybody happy. So we called it Advanced Directive Interoperability. And no, it's not just advanced directives, it's personal advanced care plans. We are now moving into portable medical orders. So those orders that a doctor can write, now those are enforceable with 911 emergency medical services personnel. And so we're moving into that arena now. We're doing an exhaustive environmental scan again, deconstructing all the different versions and making sure for every single concept there's an interoperable data term so that we can describe how to exchange access, verify, prove that the copy that you've got is the most current, and if it's not, where's the most current version? We're breaking the bonds of paper, and we're looking to liberate this information to serve, well, everybody that we look in our rearview mirror and see in COVID.
That's very impressive. That's wow. I'm really wow. Um, what are some of the challenges that you faced with this project? I'm curious. Have you had any challenges to overcome?
Oh, yeah, we do. It's a highly emotionally charged project. And so we get a lot of people with a lot of stories. And, very often you have to let them tell their story before you can get to what they're looking for. We have, this is not just long-term care. We have some of the nation's largest acute and ambulatory systems that are participating in this project. Many of them have built something within their software. And so they don't really want to let go of that. They don't really want to sunset it. They don't want to waste that money. And so they're looking what we're doing. And we get a lot of pushback. No, you should do that thing this way, because this is the way I've built this, and it's more consistent. And another vendor will say, well, I built it a little bit different. Well, why don't you do it this way? So it's been a bit of a challenge to make sure that we can serve the needs of the community that advises us, but not leave the standard so open that it just turns into a hot mess. So we've got a lot of boots on the ground clinicians. They've been a blessing. They come in and they're like, let me tell you what I went through. So you find a way, you smart, pointy-headed people, you find a way to get the technology to give me what I need when I have to make this decision, because I don't ever want to go through that again. And they're some of the most motivating people that we have. We have associations, thought leaders. We got a ton of payers that are in there. We've just got people from all walks of life. We got patient advocates. Let me tell you about my mother. And here's what my mother experienced. So how are you going to solve her problem? And we are, we're working through every concept. There was a concept of designating someone to speak for you. And some of the forms don't have a, durable medical power of attorney healthcare agent. And the nurses said, just because I don't get one, that doesn't help me. Stop right there. No, that doesn't help me. I want to know why. Is it because this form doesn't have that? And so, okay, I can live with that. Is it because they don't even have anybody in their whole wide world that they would designate? Because I need to know that. Is it because they didn't name anybody? They just weren't there when they were doing the form, and so I need to go get that. And so we had to invent a reason. We pulled standardized vocabulary terms for not available reason. So it's called a data absent reason. When the data is absent, then the implementer can say, well, it's not a part of this form. Person didn't choose to answer. They will answer later. They don't have anybody. They chose. So we were very heavily clinician informed. And these are some of the things that we did with this implementation guide. What's funny is even today I'll go out and I'll meet with different, data consortiums, or I do a lot of public speaking and a lot of educating on the topic. And people always go, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that was out there. I thought I was still just passing paper around, and, I hope that admissions scans the paper so that I can look at it. But, I don't know how I'm going to send it I guess I can print it and send it to the hospital. And, you kind of educate them on what you're doing, and they go, oh my God, that's fabulous. Like, why don't more people know about this? So that's why I'm grateful to people like you. It's good to tell a story, and to tell a good story.
Yeah, and I'm grateful for people like you, because really what the work you're doing is really amazing. And even young people might not think about these things, but it's so great to know that people out there are working to make sure you're cared for the way you want to be cared
Yes,
for. So that's
yeah,
that's really awesome. Thank you so much, Maria.
you're welcome.
So we are so over time. I can keep talking to you all day long, but we do have to we do have to close this up. So to finish, I just quickly want to know if you could give yourself go back in time and meet your younger self and give her some piece of advice. What would that be?
I would tell my younger self, stop and take a moment when you can, when you're in the buildings, when you're working in long-term care. Be late to the meeting, you know, be late clocking out or go clock out and come back. Spend a minute with those people. Just listen to their stories because they're incredible and they're rich, and sometimes you might be the only person that took a minute to sit and listen to them. And then don't don't settle for status quo. The only way the world is going to get better the way we envision it is when people start saying, I think we could do this differently and I think we could do it better. Just be the change you want to see in the world. Don't let them tell you that girls don't belong in IT. Don't let them tell you that you're too loud and you shouldn't be bringing up better ways of doing things. Just get out there and be the change and take a moment. I've had such beautiful moments with some of the residents in these communities that grabbed my hand, and some of them were nonverbal. And so I just could sit there and tell them how beautiful their sweater was and just pat their hand and tell them a story about my dog or my child or a book that I read. And after a half hour when I left, there was just such peace. So, just make a ruckus, make a change, and take a moment because that's time you'll never regret.
Thank you so much, Maria. That was beautiful. It was an amazing, insightful interview. So thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for letting me try to tell our story.
No problem. And for everyone else, keep in touch. We will be back with a new episode of LTC Heroes very soon. Thank you.